always be yourself 100% of the time, because you just don't know who you're about to influence.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform, where today I'm joined by an amazing guest. We have best-selling author, multi-award winning coach, creator of the Management M.A.S.T.E.R.Y University. We have founder of Dave Williams Coaching. Welcome today, Dave Williams.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for having me, Paul. I really appreciate it. And thank you for such a fantastic introduction.
Not a problem. And, I'm sure we're going to have a fantastic conversation based on the chats we've had before this and having a look at some of the material that you've got as well. There's some great stuff to go into. But let's start, as I always do with my guests, by asking you about your background. What did you do to get yourself where you are today?
Right. Okay. This is going to be like War and Peace Volume 5, you know. Realistically, I started off in management. 1983. Yeah. See, there was such a time, you know, the 1980s. So when I started off in management, I had hair at the time. So that gives you an idea. And the first computers were just coming out. And realistically, I got into management by chance. And realistically, I was the youngest started, and it was a company called MFI, if you remember those. And many people think, whom? But to be fair, the grounding was terrific. And what I found was basically everyone else around was so much older than what I was. Right. So the training and everything that we had was terrific. Mm. However, it didn't necessarily work for me, I found, for the simple reason I had, shall we say, fears, because everyone was so much older than me, experienced in life, and here's me, you know, a pimply-nosed kid, so to speak, that was trying to manage these guys. So I changed the way I went about things. I didn't realize it at the time. You know, for me, I was sort of like in survival mode. Mm. But looking back, this was the start of my real journey. Because instead of actually doing necessarily the traditional things when it comes to management, I was more interested in the people. Right. So I used to have, you know, sales teams, used to have the warehouse teams, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a case of, I don't know enough about how to do these things, but one thing I do know about, and that's people. Mm. So I adapted the way that I went about things. And as time progressed, that served me so well. And that's propelled me for everything that I've done since. Because what happened, I was with a couple of organizations, and one thing I say about retail, it's the easiest thing to get into, but the hardest thing to get out of. And I'm not being disrespectful to other people that are in retail there, because it is a fantastic medium. Mm. So I changed from that. And I was also away such an awful lot. And being perfectly honest, because of the age that I was homesick. Yeah, I missed my parents, I missed my friends, etc. So I needed to get out for me at that particular stage. And so I got into direct sales. Yeah, what a contrast that is, you know. And it was a challenge. But again, looking back, it was a case of, right, hang on a second, sales, all you're doing is actually sharing one emotion with someone else with a view of changing their thought process to potentially, you know, making a sale. So that's what I did. And with the organization that I was with, I had the record as far as the amount of leads and everything in one particular day. And, you know, the likes of the direct sales itself was literally knocking on doors. And then I thought, okay, this isn't right for me. You know, it was all right when the weather was great, but, you know, when it starts raining and everything, it puts a different spin on things. So I went back into retail. And I worked my way through the ranks. I was actually running my own stores. I was running my own regions, etc. So, and it was a great experience. It really was. And then ultimately, I basically got made redundant. So it was a different way that that particular organization was going with their management. Hey, it happens. Yeah, I didn't feel that way at the time because I was thinking, I failed. They don't like me, that sort of thing, as most human beings do. So by chance then, got into first time that I started doing my own business, and that was a health and wellness business. So learned an awful lot about that. And I loved it in so many ways because I was introduced then to big conferences. And I loved the vibe and the atmosphere that when we had those, it was just like going to a massive rock concert, And I just absolutely loved it and I thrived on it. And realistically, that was at that particular time, because of what I've been doing in management, I'd actually been training, I'd been what's now classed as coaching, but it wasn't for me, it was mentoring.
Yep.
But coaching, the title of it now is sort of encompassed so many different areas. And so that was great. And then I was taken poorly. And I found that I couldn't do that. So I had to find something else at that particular time. So wonderful lady that I was with said, right, okay, I know an awful lot more about computers than you do. So let's start doing things online, which we did, which we started to have some really great success as far as that was concerned. And then with one organization, we found out the organization had gone bump because the owner had been arrested by the FBI. Okay. What we didn't realize at the time is that was a Ponzi scheme. We had no idea. So then it was a case of, right, okay, what else? So then I went back into training with different organizations, but also with helping. I had contract with helping unemployed people get back into work. Right. That was phenomenal. It really was, because it gave me a different dimension as far as people were concerned. Because with all due respect to them, phenomenal people, but they weren't necessarily the demographic that I'd worked with previously. Right. And there were so many fantastic people there that they just had so many different knots. So for me at that particular time, it was a case of, right, what can I do for these people? So the course was 2 weeks, and let's say it was on warehousing for argument's sake. So it was meant to be 2 weeks on warehousing and then get them an interview. Now, I had a colleague that would actually arrange the interviews. So I thought, no, let's move that, okay? So the first week, we did the warehousing or whatever the content was. The second week was working on that. And realistically, I will say I didn't know what I was doing. I was using my own experience and bits and pieces I picked up along the way. And realistically, the conversion rate that we had from those courses was the greatest in the organization. And then something happened in my personal life that totally changed it, because on the 10th of December in 2015, my other half passed away with a heart attack, just like that. 2016, I went into a massive tailspin. So it was depression, anxiety, even contemplating ending my own suffering. And I knew I had to do something. Now, my partner and I had always been a magnet for other people that came to us when they had challenges. So that's how I first started into coaching, and coaching at a higher level. So it's not just someone that comes and says, right, I need a hand setting up a CV, as an example. This is, right, the emotional coaching. Let's get to the core of the issue. Let's get that handled. And yeah, I've been doing that ever since. So now that's been adapted. So I'm now big performance coach. But what I've also done as well is expanded on my particular strength, because I was also getting asked to go and start working with organizations and work with likes of directors of those organizations, which I found to be great fun. Yeah. And one of the things that I had always done, the bigger the title, the bigger pedestal I'd put them on. I don't know whether you've had that experience. Yeah. So when I started working with these boards of directors, I found out, no, they're human beings with the same challenges we have. Yeah. So utilizing my coaching and my training experience as well, I found that I was going to different organizations, but basically they're all having the same challenges. So that was when I also developed the Management Mastery University, because bringing everything under the one umbrella, it just made sense.
Right.
So now it's a help, in case of a help, different organizations with their leadership development because of that. And I've also gone on as well to expand my speaking business as well. So I now speak at conferences. I've actually done a couple of summits this year, which I love because you've actually got X amount of people in front of you, so you can share your information and your golden nuggets once and impact so many more people. So it's varied with what I do, but I love it. I need variety in my life.
Right.
And it's also a case of there's one common denominator, and that's people.
Right. Yeah, I've written that down. The sort of people focus and that element of two things that stood out. One is the people focus, but also what must have been a lot of self-reflection. In terms of didn't realize things at the time, but now realize them. Those elements of actually when you step back, you get yourself through something. I found the same. I was made redundant in a certain circumstance, and I got myself through that. But the true value I got was the reflection afterwards, and then helping others with that same reflection process that I've got. And I think that's where I see a huge common theme with a lot of my guests and a lot of people that work in this space, isn't it? What's your views on the values of reflection in that space?
Oh, it's massive. Because I'm a firm believer that we are in control of the quill of our life. So for the redundancy, as an example, that was just the end of a chapter. The beauty of it is I'm in control of the chapters moving forward. And with having the quill, I can write my own chapters. And if I write a chapter that's not what I want in the big scheme of things, I can always rip that chapter out or just abandon it and then start another one.
Right.
Yeah, there isn't any blueprint for ourselves. So we decide what we want. And now it's a case of with what I do, then I'm just passionate about it. Yeah, we spoke very briefly before we went live. And, when you've got a passion for what you do, it's not a job. It's a case of, in my case, really helping people be the best that they can be. And for me, to see the results of other people, wow, that is my driver. And I love to see people grow. And the beauty of it is, from my perspective, I've actually helped people with one-to-one coaching, from single parents to CEOs and senior police officers to athletes. So it's varied all the time. But like I say, seeing people grow and, remove the concrete, not literally, but remove the concrete that they've surrounded themselves in, so they can actually see, the phenomenal future and their worth. Because I'm a firm believer, we've all got a gift, but sometimes things happen and we actually lose our focus of what that gift really is.
Yeah.
And when we find that gift, that's when we just propel our futures, because we can see that, we feel that as well. And at the end of the day, life is all about emotion. And when our emotion is aligned with what we want, then, hey, we become unstoppable. And that's what I'm all about.
Brilliant stuff. And it's such a great lesson as well. And maybe you can tell us then a little bit more about the Management Mastery University piece then. And who's that for? What would people expect if they were to get involved?
Yeah, oh, bless you. Thank you. Yeah, well, realistically, I normally work with 7 and 8 figure organizations. I've worked with an awful lot higher, but I also work with some lower. But it's a generalization, and it's 4 days. Okay. Many people will think, oh, no, 4 days can't be out the business. Well, if you feel you can't be out the business, then you need this, because realistically, there should be other people there that can take the slack. Because realistically, we go on 2 weeks holiday as an example. The business doesn't fall down. It's 4 days. It's immersive. And the first thing that I do is I focus on the why. Because mastery, it's an acronym. Okay. So it's motivation, articulation. So it's communication. And I have to use my fingers here because I forget which letter I'm up to. The S is success. So because so many organizations and indeed individuals, look, been there. create a plan. They create a vision of what they want, and they don't achieve their goals. Mm. So I've created my own particular system that helps organizations do that. T is the likes of techniques, because we all need to understand how people work. So it's the psychology of how people work, because most people, when they get management development, and I'm not knocking, don't get me wrong, but we don't get the understanding of behavior patterns, archetypes, and all of those things. And once we know them, management and leadership's so much easier, because we can see patterns of behavior in people before they even realize they're doing it. And if it's not working right, then they also get the skills of how to change that so the person becomes a better person. So I think that was T. I think we're up to E now, and that's engagement. Because so many people, especially when you're in a high profile or a high pressured environment, we forget that people are people. Yeah. And the biggest secret when it comes to leadership, I feel, is engagement and building rapport. Because when we've built the right rapport with people, we can actually lead them anywhere, because they gain the know, like, and trust easily. And then we can show them the right way to do things, as an example. And because we've built that rapport, they're going to accept what we want to do, what we're showing them, because they can also see the benefits for themselves. And then the R comes down to, I've put it down as results, but it's a time management system, because most people that I speak to say, I've not got enough time in the day. Yeah. This is a relatively simple system that there's only 3 elements to it. And it simplifies so much, because when people write out a to-do list, they focus on each individual section, which is great. And when you actually do this particular system, then there may well be 2 or 3 things that don't look interlinked. But when you look at them and write them down, when you decide on what your outcome is, you can speak to the same person and then do 2 things at the same time, so to speak. And then the why. The why arguably is the most important piece of the jigsaw, and that's you. See, I'm a firm believer when it comes to leadership, we need to lead inside first before we can lead outside. Because so many leaders, and I was one, don't get me wrong, I was one, because I didn't get myself into a peak performance mode. So I wasn't giving my all at the time. I thought I was, but the reality was I certainly wasn't. So I've missed out on so many different things, but because I've missed out on so many different things, the influence I had on other people wasn't as strong as it could have been, and indeed should have been. So that's the Management Mastery. So like I said, it's 4 days, but it's very interactive. It's very in-depth. Right. So it's very much a case of full on, because I'm a firm believer that when you do something, when it's immersive, you get better results.
And is this an in-person piece, or is it
virtual?
Yeah, in person? Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And normally I go into organizations and do it. And it may well be the likes of away days, but it's still with one organization. But a bit later this year, in November, I'm actually doing one where it's going to be open to different organizations. So they can send one individual. So I'm looking for that. I'm not looking for massive numbers for that, because I want it to keep it nice and, I'll say, cozy. And I don't mean that in a negative way or anything along those lines. So it's a bit more intimate. So what can happen, what I anticipate happening with that is the fact, because they're going to be coming from different organizations, they're going to network with each other.
Yeah.
And when I do courses or whatever, I always encourage that, because we all know people that could help someone else.
Yes.
But unless we know that, we don't know how we can help them.
I think there's huge value in that. I mean, I was talking to a colleague recently on that very piece. So firstly, I love a good acronym. And so Mastery, loving it. And it encapsulates everything that is needed in that management space as well. So kudos for that. And but going back to that element of the community side or the network side, I see two lots of value when it comes to that. One is that if you're going into these things, you might be thinking the problems I'm facing are unique to me. Nobody else
Yeah.
is facing anything.
Yeah.
And by having particularly a mixed group, you can go, actually, you're working in a completely different environment to me, in a completely different sort of sector or industry. And it sounds like you've got exactly the same problems as me.
Yeah.
And then the other element that I think is hugely valuable is just the sharing of knowledge in the room,
Yes.
which is, like some people are facing that problem for the first time, and don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Others have tried several things and they failed, but they can share those things. And others have tried something and succeeded, and they can
Yes.
share that. And suddenly
Exactly.
you've got not only acceleration to a good result, but you've also got a huge amount of learning as to what not to do, and where what the options are in front of you, and maybe some of those options that hadn't worked for others are perfectly right for one individual. So it's just that community feel has a huge amount of value, I feel. So that's a great spot.
Yes, thank you, and yeah, I very much concur with that because well, when I've actually done different events prior to now, yeah, I have had two organisations get together, and it's been sort of 6 and 7 figure contracts,
Right.
and it doesn't happen all the time, obviously, but realistically, that's as far as a bonus in comparison to the course or whatever, absolutely phenomenal, because without us all meeting, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
And again, when we're all together, it generates the know, like, and trust.
Yes, precisely. Great stuff in there. And I wanted to ask you a bit more about yourself then, in terms of how do you've mentioned peak performance. How do you keep yourself at peak performance, or get yourself back to peak performance when you recognize that you may be falling back? What are the things you do?
And that is a great question. And I think that's the type of question that everyone should ask themselves, really. And because I've had some years doing this now, I've learned how to condition myself. So when I first started off doing this, oh dear me, all I can say is it's a good job that I wasn't being filmed, because I do some wacky stuff and it works for me. The likes of power poses as an example. And it's also a case of what I didn't used to do many years ago is focus on the outcome. Yeah, I focused on what needed doing, but I never thought about the outcome. It sounds surreal, I know. But it's the same with everything, isn't it? If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
And that was a massive shift for myself. So for me, right, okay, what is it we need to achieve? Right, there's a major challenge here. Okay, we know there's a challenge there. What's the outcome that we want? Right, how do we action that then? That's going to resolve the challenge, but get us closer to our end game. And with that being the case, like I say, power poses, I do power moves. I also do an awful lot of affirmations and that as well. Okay. So it's for me, and this is what I share with my clients also. It's a case of finding the way that works for you. We're all individuals. We'll find a different way. And I was working with this female director of an organization, an absolutely lovely lady, but it was a male-dominated organization. So we were talking about power moves, and she was a bit shying away from it. And it was the time that we're in lockdown and everything. So everything was on Zoom or Teams or whatever it is. I suppose subtitles should come up. Other programs are still available, and we were talking about moves, and we practiced a couple when we were on camera together, and then we caught up a couple of weeks later, and she'd been at a directors meeting and something wasn't going quite right with the other directors. So I said, okay, so what did you do? She said, I did my power move. So I said, okay, fantastic, thinking, right, we'd done certain things and they hadn't really had the desired effect. So I said, so what was it? And she said, I did a pelvic thrust. So here's me picturing all these pictures of people on the screen, and she's discreetly under the desk doing a pelvic thrust. But fair play to you, it works for you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We can give guidelines and everything, but you've got to find out specifically what's working for yourself.
Yeah.
And I love this lady immensely. She's a wonderful human being.
Yeah.
And that particular organization are blessed to have her.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think you talk there about there's so many different things you can do. One of the ones I'll often come back to, at least as a story, is I heard that Richie McCaw, the All Blacks captain,
Yeah,
legendary rugby player, what he would do when he found himself in a tight spot in a game, maybe it was high pressure, needed to make a decision, moments to go, whatever it was, he would stamp his feet and he'd literally ground himself to remind himself that I'm on a rugby pitch. This is my domain. And
yeah.
so, and other people do something, maybe a power move. Other people will go off for a walk, maybe have a drink of water, do something that's right for you. But I think if you can connect it with who you are and what motivates you, then you're on an absolute winner.
Totally. And with everything that you've shared there's one element, and that's we change our physiology.
Right.
So it's the way that we move our body, because in this day and age, we're being programmed to live in a box.
Mm.
We're actually looking at a box now because we're looking at a screen. Most people get out of bed, which is a box. Go to work, if they go to the office, in a mobile box. Have a meal out of a box, heat it up in a box, microwave. We're not designed to be in a box. So we need to break the pattern. And we do that with movement. And all of those fantastic stories that you shared there, that's what we're all doing. We're all changing our physiology at that time. And if we do it radically enough, whether it be a case of stamping your feet in front of thousands of people or whatever, then that's what it's doing. It's driving those grooves into ourselves, saying, hey, yeah, I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing.
Wonderful stuff. So let me ask this question that I asked to all my guests then. With the skill set and the experience you've got, who would you most like to help? And that might be an individual, a team, an organization. Who would that ideal client or group of people or individual that you would most like to make a difference with?
That is a great question, and trying to refine the answer is the biggest challenge. Because again, I'm all about human beings and helping as many people as I can do. But realistically, for me, it's about the ripple effect. So if I go into an organization as an example, and let's just say there's 10 people that I'm actually working with there. So I'm going to influence 10 people. They're actually then going to go and influence at least another 5.
Right.
That will then influence, etc., etc. And the ripples just expand massively. And that's one of the reasons why I love doing events as well, because, bigger audiences, more ripples. But that for me is an ideal. Why? Because I'm a firm believer that so many phenomenal organizations out there that are not actually achieving what they can do. They're achieving great results, fantastic, but they're not necessarily achieving what they really can do, with the right tools in place, and also, performing at our peak ourselves. And, as one particular example, around where I am, and I'm in the Midlands, there was one organization that I was desperately trying to get in touch with. I'd actually sent letters, I'd sent emails, I'd rung numerous times, and they just wouldn't answer the phone. I knew they were having challenges behind the scenes. So I was desperate to get in there, really desperate to get in there, but I seemed to try basically everything I could. And then about 4 months later, I found that the challenges had still gone on, so much so that the company folded.
Right.
Yeah. Now that hurt me because I knew that I could help them.
Right.
So, so let's say 7 or 8 figure business as a generalization because of the ripple effect. Because, as far as the Management Mastery University is concerned, it's, for me, yes, it's marketed as a leadership course, but in many ways, it's more like a life leadership course.
Mm.
And realistically, as I mentioned a bit earlier on, we've not got a blueprint, have we? So the more skills that we can get, the more impact that we can have for ourselves, our nearest and dearest, our loved ones, the kids, etc., and indeed professionally as well. So, sorry, that was a bit of an elongated answer for you. Really.
That's fantastic. No, really good stuff. But mate, I'm going to, as always, I'm going to flip this on its head a little bit and say, if you could sit down and have a coffee, have a meal, have a drink with somebody or even maybe it might be a group of people, but somebody who you think just sitting down and having that chat with them would really help you to elevate your game and help you perform? Who would you want that to be?
Yeah, to be honest, it's one of those I don't need to give any thought to, really. And it's a gentleman called Joseph McClendon III. I've actually seen him virtually on 2 or 3 occasions now. And some people actually say to me, where have you got your energy? Why is it you're always energetic, etc.? But I'm like a tortoise in comparison to him. He's like Tigger on speed, and his energy for me, because I'm an energy type guy, is just that infectious. And I would love to be able to have some time sitting down with him. I think we'd have an awful lot of laughs and may not get any work done, but we'd have an awful lot of laughs because, for me, I thrive off that type of energy. So, he would be my number one.
Oh, fantastic! I'll have to look him up. It's not somebody I've come across yet, but let's have a look into that, and maybe I'll put a link or two in the show notes here. So if people want to go and find out more,
he is on LinkedIn.
Right. Okay. Definitely, it's getting a knock from my side anyway. Right. So if you could leave the audience with one key lesson, one key thing, one key point that you'd like to get across to people, what would you want that to be?
Yeah, again, there's so many that we can choose, isn't there? And there was a quote that I came up with some time ago, and it's a case of always be yourself 100% of the time, because you just don't know who you're about to influence.
Wow, that's wonderful. I think that's a real one to hit home there, because you're right. You don't know who you're talking to, who that person is. Even if you think you know them, you don't know who they're connected with. Who are they going to go and speak to next? Who are they? What's that ripple effect that you talked about? So, I love that. That's a fantastic quote.
Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. And people are obviously going to want to find out more. They're going to want to find out more about yourself, Dave. They're going to want to find out about Management Mastery University and all sorts of other great things. Where do they go to find out more about you?
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much indeed. Well, as you may well have gathered, I'm actually on LinkedIn. So if you look for Dave Williams, it's not common, it's popular, name. So I changed it to Dave Williams Coaching now. So that's me on LinkedIn. If you feel that I can help you and your audience at an event or a conference through speaking, then it's obviously all the W's and everything. So it's switchonthelightcoach.co.uk. Obviously, we've got the Management Mastery University.com. If you want to reach out to me personally, then email me at dave@davewilliamscoaching.com. And if it's all right with yourself, Paul, what I'd like to do is give your audience a free gift.
Fine with me. Free's my favorite price.
So I've actually got some video trainings that are available there. So if you go to, again, all the W's, free, as in FREE, giftfromdave.info.
Yep.
So it's obviously going to ask, because it's downloadable, it's going to ask for your email and name and everything along those lines. But there's about 6 different videos there. And that's from me to whoever might like to partake in that. So
wonderful stuff. No, we'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes below. So do check them out. And as always, I do encourage the audience, when my guests are coming on, they're giving this information, they're giving their connection details, they're giving all this wonderful free gifts. In this case, do take them up on it. Make sure that you go there, you check it out, you find out more, and you just knock on people's doors, because it's where those conversations start. But you never know where they're going to take you. So,
Indeed.
I mean, an absolutely fascinating chat today, David, and I'm sure there'll be more chats like this in the future. So, thanks so much for being on the show today, Dave Williams.
Thank you very much indeed for having me, Paul. It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.